Thanks very much, Sue, and good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank TransGrid for undertaking this stakeholder engagement, a broad-based stakeholder engagement. I think it's a really useful thing to do, and particularly that it's being undertaken well ahead of any investment, so there's time to implement the outcomes from the engagement and have a real impact. So congratulations, TransGrid, on doing that. Today, I'd like to talk about why we need to consider technological change before making any large network investments. But before that, I'd like to take you through some of the things the city are doing, the targets that it has, what's already been implemented, and what needs to change to manage technology into the future. That's not my presentation. No.
Keep going forward.
Yep. Okay, that's it. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So the city has an emission reduction plan to reduce the total emissions from the local government area by 70% by 2030. And it's made up of a portfolio of activities, and they're listed here. But I guess the major ones are energy efficiency and also local distributed generation. So the city has developed plans to implement those activities. But I guess importantly, though, for this forum is that emission reductions generally relate also to reductions in energy consumption. So I guess the plans for that the city does have an impact on potential future planning for supply into the city. So the city's developed a range of master plans to deliver that target, including a decentralised energy master plan on Trigeneration and energy master plan for renewable energy. And at the moment, it's also preparing an energy efficiency master plan. So just a note on Trigeneration, first of all. What is Trigeneration? It's a technology that generates electricity locally, and it also produces hot water and cold water at the same time. So you actually get three products from one fuel, gas. It's a safe and reliable technology. It's used around the world. So it's not new. It's certainly been implemented in many other places. And the city's master plan looked at how that could be implemented in the city. It looked at where the energy was being used and analysed where Trigeneration could fit into the city. These bars actually show the energy consumption in the CBD. So the city estimated that about 477 megawatts of Trigeneration could be possible by 2030. It also developed a renewable energy master plan and estimated that 18% of the city's electricity could come from renewable energy by 2030. So that's about a quarter of the demand in the city. That we saw about 2,000 megawatts of supply coming into the city. It's about a quarter of that. So there's the potential to make quite a big impact on what electricity supply is needed to be brought into the city by cable. So how far has the city got with this plan? So far, I guess in terms of carbon abatement, the city was the first city to gain carbon neutral status, and it still maintains that. It's implemented a lead lighting program for its street lights. It's retrofitting all its buildings to improve the energy efficiency. It's rolling out the largest PV program in Australia, and it's reduced its fleet emissions by 20%. And that all adds up to a 19% reduction in emissions from 2006 to 2012. And at the moment, it's on track to reduce its emissions by 26% by 2016. And so the lead lighting program is replacing the city's street lights. There's 18,000 street lights in the city. 2,000, I think around 2,700 of those have been replaced so far. The city owns 8,000 of them, and it'll replace all those with LED lights. I think TransGrid owns 13,500, and there's a great opportunity there to replace all those with LED lights as well. This is some of the solar program that the city is implementing. There's about a megawatt of cells going in at the moment on 37 sites. So that energy is being consumed mainly within the buildings that they're fitted to, and we're hoping to find a way of using the energy from those cells to supply buildings next door. Here's some of the metrics on what the impact of those activities have been. So for the city's own organisation, the council's operations, if you like, the amount of electricity that it's consuming has dropped by 17% since 2006. And most of that has come from building energy efficiency improvements and the lights. And we intend to keep that trajectory going. So there's plans in place to continue reducing at that rate. This is the statistics for the city's local government area, which includes the CBD. And over the same time, the electricity consumption in that area has dropped by 8%. And there was a question about peak demand. These reductions have been driven by businesses wanting to cut their power bill. And when they want to cut their power bill, they implement energy efficiency in a way that reduces volume consumption, but also demand, because they pay for demand. So they're doing both. And as Luke mentioned, the HVAC modifications actually reduce peak. So this 8% is volume and peak reduction. And this one is really, I think, an indication of what's possible and what's coming. The city has a group of businesses and large organisations that are working on bringing down their carbon emissions. And that group includes 15 of the largest building owners in the CBD, as well as some of the biggest organisations like the universities. And I think some of them are here today. So far, they've achieved a 27% reduction in their energy consumption, and they intend to keep that going at the same trajectory. They've taken on board technological change, and they're saving money. And so there's a real change out there in the way people use energy, and we need to take that into consideration. So I think we need to recognise that consumers have access to new technology and they're using it. They're reducing their consumption, and they're also installing local generation, as we've seen with the solar schemes and some Trigeneration schemes as well, and that's going to continue. So we really do need to take these things into account in forward planning. And I guess the biggest threat here, particularly with battery technology coming on board, is that consumers may elect to stop using the grid. They may elect to take themselves off the grid because it's too expensive. And what happens then? The rest of us have to pay for it, and the price keeps going up. Nobody wants that to happen. We all want to use the grid efficiently, and we should be planning on how to do that now and taking technological change into account. It's not the most efficient thing to have consumers disconnecting from the grid. So we need a regulatory framework that can adapt to technological change. We need the right incentives to create a level playing field, not just for centralised generation or networks, but also for distributed generation and for energy efficiency. They all need to be taken into account within the regulatory framework. Sharing local electricity benefits everybody. I think you're all aware that local generation, we've talked about this through some of the other presentations, can reduce network demand, and it can also reduce emissions. So there's a dual outcome there. And as I've pointed out with the master planning that the city's done, there's a lot of potential in the Sydney to do it. Better demand response and network utilisation is a better outcome for everyone if energy can be shared between buildings. At the moment, the regulations don't allow local generation to share energy with the building next door. It's extremely difficult to do that. And the right regulatory framework will provide a better opportunity for the networks to be able to forecast what the demand's going to be. At the moment, we've seen the uncertainty in the demand forecasts that networks are grappling with. They don't know how much they should invest because they don't know what's going to happen with demand management, efficiency, demand growth. A better regulatory framework is going to help them with those demand forecasts. And ultimately, that's going to be a better outcome for consumers because it'll give the optimum outcome and keep the costs down. So there's a need for a better regulatory level playing field. Generators, local generation needs to be able to connect. We need transparent benefits for reduced network demand. So local generation can reduce network demand and reduce future investment costs, but there needs to be some way that people can have certainty investing in generation. Other countries, for example, for generation and other forms of demand-side management, put a rack rate up. Networks publish their network charges every year. In other places, in that same document, there's a rack rate published for a benefit to be paid for the incentives that people are doing to reduce demand. And that means that a building manager can look down the rack rate and say, I'll do that. The building manager doesn't have to go and do a deal with the local network and sign a contract and negotiate for 6 months to get a payment. They just do it. They're the sort of things that can give networks more certainty that there's going to be a market out there to implement change. And so the networks get better forecasts. They can right-size the network. There's lower risk of customers disconnecting or connecting behind the meter and disconnecting themselves from the network and pushing the price up for everyone else. And ultimately, customers get more choice and lower cost. So the bottom line is that if we don't adapt to technological change, we'll just continue to play catch-up, and consumers actually may move off the grid, stranding assets and pushing the price up for everyone else. I think blocking the inevitable outcome of this technological change by changing the pricing mechanism and penalising customers for doing these things is futile, and it's really going to cause, I think, some real problems for networks and the community into the future if that actually does come about. As I mentioned, other countries have seen this coming and they've adapted their regulatory regime to deal with it. They put the right incentives in place because technology is changing and it's happening at the local level, and our regulatory system needs to recognise that. So we need to create a level playing field with a regulatory framework which works for everyone, and that'll avoid overinvestment in networks in the future, and it'll be a better outcome for all customers. Thanks.